And the gap is that the youth are the ones who feel like we shouldn't be feeling this way, having to teach ourselves and teach you the things that you should have taught us.
Ooh. What is going on, everyone? We are back with Pew Babies with some new fire for you. I know you saying, who is that at the table? Well, we have another guest. This is a lifetime friend of mine who goes by Mr. Barksdale. We played on the field together for sports. We played in band, went to school, cried together, laughed together. You played for me preaching. We have been through a lot. And he is here to bring some juiciness to the episode, his own words. And the subject today is the prodigal son. Mm-hmm. Now, a lot of you know this already, some of you may not, but it's pretty much dealing with leaving and coming back. Mm-hmm. And on that leaving and coming back experience, we're going to get a lot of intel and insight from his point of view, and he's also going to offer the musician's standpoint as well, because he is a professional musician, and not just on the gospel side, but the secular side as well. And I know some of you are clutching your pearls about that, but y'all already know that we give you both good, bad, nitty gritty, all the above. So that's what today's episode is, and we're going to just jump straight in there. Nice. So being how we know there are a lot of musicians who definitely do play both gospel and secular music. Sure. Give us some of your experiences and relating it to the prodigal, because you're a Pew Baby yourself.
Yeah, I am. I grew up in a Baptist church, full of nothing but old people who love the Lord.
Oh, glory.
And, growing up on principles is a huge influence, in my life. And so just seeing the spiritual side of things, as well as being, aware of the secular side of things. Mm-hmm. I found a balance personally. I wasn't one who judged them for believing what they chose to believe, mm-hmm. and I wasn't one who judged them for playing how they want to play or believing in what. I just found a balance that you just treat people how they deserve to be treated. Mm-hmm. So for me it was easy. I really didn't have too many troubles.
When you're that type of person.
Yeah, that part.
Because everybody ain't like that.
That's very true. There are people who are very strict in what they believe is all, and that's it. Mm-hmm. And, they can be hard to deal with, you know what I'm saying, on all kinds of levels. Mm-hmm. Especially as a musician. Some pastors even are very strong about what type of music they want or desire. Which is perfectly fine to me. Mm-hmm. I like a concrete blueprint. You want this, you want that. Great, you're gonna get the best of what you desire. You don't want nothing else, you're not gonna get nothing else.
That's right. What it is. I gave you what you requested.
You know what I'm saying? So, but the other side to that is pastors who are very bold about not allowing you to express your feelings and how God is using your gift. Mm-hmm. I think pastors forget that part. They forget to allow, the musician to be the musician, mm-hmm. and to be the vessel to set the atmosphere, mm-hmm. And so sometimes that expression is through different chords, mm-hmm. or through, a different energy in how they move an audience or back a preacher or set an atmosphere, mm-hmm. and sometimes that's tolerated by pastors, mm-hmm. and sometimes it's a sin to a pastor, mm-hmm. sometimes it's too much to the audience or to the deaconess or the first lady, and mm-hmm. it's just a lot of things that really don't matter, that cause unnecessary drama, mm-hmm. And what should otherwise be a peaceful environment, yes. You know what I mean? So mm-hmm. that's kind of my take on it.
Mm-hmm. And I like how you said, let the musician be the musician, mm-hmm. because we find that is an issue that we find in church and outside the world or wherever. People don't allow you to operate and use your gift effectively like you're supposed to, because they want to constantly, and some sort of way, try to use you like a puppet.
Yeah, in a sense. I mean, it's just, to me, I'm only going to say everything from my perspective.
Yeah. And you know, keep it real.
Yeah, I mean, it just gets really, 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 really toxic when you have people who want things to be a certain way and don't know how to articulate or communicate the proper way to get that out of somebody. You know, a lot of it just boils down to how you're being treated. A lot of musicians can attest to this, but I'm certain that everybody would agree with, if you take care of me, I'm gonna take care of you.
Simple.
It's really simple. Really simple math. You know, do unto others as you'd have them do. You know, so with that being
Now
said,
we're in the word.
yeah, that being said though, you know, it complicates things when, you know, you're unsure in your own communication about something you are desiring from someone else. You know, so that complicates a lot of what should otherwise be simple energies. In my personal experiences from pastors, as well as music directors or choir directors who don't know how to articulate what they want, but, you know, will shame you for not playing it how they want, or will shame you for not knowing how to play, even though the communication was poor.
Yeah. Or lack thereof.
And it's sad because what they'll do is they will, rather than pull you to the side and have a one-on-one conversation with you and say, you know, I don't agree with that, or whatever the case may be, they will go across the pulpit and say, how you gonna usher in the Spirit of God and you're playing usher? Isn't that how it goes? Am I lying?
You are not lying.
And so that's interesting that you said that part about effective communication. And I think that has been a big breakdown, not only between musicians and church leadership or just the church in general, but just like you just said, you are also a fellow Pew Baby. It's a breakdown of communication between Pew Babies and leadership as well.
Yeah,
you know
totally.
what I mean?
You know, and I was raised, my grandmother, she played organ for 20 plus years. And I saw the culture underneath her wings. And so, you know, as a Pew Baby myself, just being in church every day of my life.
Yes,
Every
Lord.
day. You can attest to it up.
It's
It be it.
yeah, man. But you know, personally, it's just as I got older, I felt like, you know, man, there's a lot of judgment. You know what I'm saying? That just shouldn't exist for something that somebody's doing unto God, if you will. You know, and so, like I said, communication is everything. You know, as a musician, you know, there are things that, you know, I may not agree with a pastor, you know, and I just make sure that I voice those things accordingly. Like, hey, the work that you're requiring me to do takes this much time. Outside of this life I have and doing this job for you, I have a lot of other things going on. So it's awesome when you can meet a pastor or whoever your leader is halfway and say, you know what, I respect that, you know, Justin, let's try to work something out. You know, you think you can do this for me and I can, you know, meet you here. You know, when you have those kind of situations, it's amazing. You know, the other side of that though is, you know, the musicians not knowing how to communicate to the pastor what it is that they're trying to infuse, if you will, in the vision for the church or whatever is required from the music department. You know, so it's just about communication to me.
and we know that there, like we said, there's such a lapse in communication in general when it comes to young people with the church, people in general with the church. Outside the church, people do not know how to effectively communicate. And if you can't communicate, how can we come to a common ground?
And the gap is that the youth are the ones who feel like we shouldn't be feeling this way, having to teach ourselves and teach you the things that you should have taught us.
Oh,
You know,
now that was good.
that's the other part.
That was good.
You know, it's like the reason there's no youth in churches, for me, is because there's no love anymore. There's no protection anymore. There's no trust. There's no honor. You know, and when you have people that raised you to be who you are, and you think you're a stand-up person, you know, right from wrong, yes sir, no sir, yes ma'am, no ma'am, all of those principles. It's like you're still looked at as being a black sheep in the family because you're not still doing the same thing that's been done since the day before forever.
Woo, you talking good.
You're talking good.
And so it's like the frustration is the youth are essentially like, man, look, why am I teaching you what I've learned from you?
And you getting upset when I use what you taught me against you when I don't agree with the certain like you said, because I was going to say when you talked about the judgment, you're constantly being judged.
Yeah.
How do you relate? Before I forget that train of thought, because you're saying so many good points. How have you dealt with the judgment? Being since you play gospel as well as the secular, how do you deal with it? How have you cope with it?
Well, I like to think of it like this. Anything in life starts out as a seed. People's judgment have nothing to do with me planting seed.
That's right.
So how I deal with it is by watering my seed. I don't pay attention to what anybody else feels because it's irrelevant at the end of the day. I have to live for me.
That's right.
I got 2 baby girls. I got a queen at the house. You know, it's like nobody else matters. You know, and I think what will enable people to be, you know, stronger in their spiritual journeys as well as their understanding of reality is just simply knowing that you're only accountable for you, not what somebody else thinks or feels you should be, should talk like, sing like, look like, act like. I just don't get that, you know.
If more people could have that mindset.
it's
And it's awkward too because it's like, not to cut you off, I do apologize, but what you just said was so important because I think what has happened in the church is so a template has been created for how you're supposed to look, how you're supposed to preach, how you're supposed to present your gift to God. You know what I mean? It's this template. And so anytime that you step outside of that template, they automatically ping you as a sinner or a backslider or this or that. When in reality, as I've mentioned on a previous episode, when you look at God, the creator, who has created all of this, why do you think that God would want us to stay in such a small box? This template is man-made. It's not God-made. And so if God has created all of these flowers, all of these animals that we have yet to discover, just sea, sky, food, just things that we haven't even discovered in the millions of years that humanity has been walking this planet, why do you think that your template is the only way that's acceptable to Christ? Just like he gave us this show, and people don't think that God gave us this show, but he did. And I know that he did because it has touched people like yourself and other people that have inboxed us. Older and younger generations of people have come to us and said, you know what, I really appreciate you all stepping outside of the box and doing this because these are things that we wanted to talk about for a long time. But every relationship with Christ is individualized. Just like you said a second ago, you have a wife and 2 daughters. Your relationship with each one of these women in your life is different. It's not the same. Totally different. You know what I mean? And my relationship with him is not the same as my relationship with another friend that I have, and so on and so forth. And so if our relationships with each other and the people in our lives and the people in our families are different, why does the church think that the relationship with God has to look one way?
Ooh, that's a good point.
Well, I mean, we were slaves at a point, and in being slaves at one point, there was indoctrination, and through the processes of indoctrination, there was mental abuse, there was physical abuse, which automatically leads to spiritual abuse, which
And people don't believe in
that part, you know, and so that makes you gullible to believe or forced to believe when you're being beaten to believe certain things that, you know, are what they are, and they can't be any other way. I like to put it like when we're born with no sense of understanding. There's no God, there's no left, there's no right. There just is who we are.
That's right.
And everything from when we're born up until, say, now, 30 years later, it's just a product of experiences that those that came before us infused in us. We really never had our own free liberal perspective to explore what we believe.
Right.
And what we think is God, or what we view as reality, or what we view as a higher being. To me, some people, you know, you choose to call God the universe, whatever, you know, and I'm the same way. I just believe that, going to your point about how everybody has a different relationship with God, I think you should just start with the basics. The basics is that there are millions of galaxies, and there are millions of ants. And in between that spectrum, there's me.
Flat out.
You show me the picture of the man that made the first galaxy, I might believe a little something. But I don't have any proof of that. That's how I know there's a God, or that the universe is what it is. You know, I choose to say God, universe, just depends on what mood I'm in. But that understanding is start with the basics. Just makes it a simple understanding. Like, I don't need, just because you view God this way doesn't mean I have to. And just because you feel like it should be this way doesn't mean that works for me. You know, and it's just like accepting that. And it doesn't have to be a problem when there's indifference. You know,
you don't have to kick me out the church.
You don't have to kick me out the church. You don't have to, you don't have to shame me. You don't have to talk ill or lie on me. You don't have to do any of these things. You can just treat me how you would want to be treated. And
with love.
You know, but
isn't that how Jesus drew? No, I'm serious. Did you get that perspective?
With love
from
and kindness.
I mean, people make problems out of nothing these days. I think it's just because a lot of people are afraid to accept who they are. I do this exercise with a lot of people that I come across, people I mentor and stuff like that, and I say, let's do an exercise. So whatever happens, and I got this from KRS-One, but this says purified water, right? I tell people this all the time. All right, so on the count of 3, we're gonna say purified water, but don't say it out your mouth. So 1, 2, 3, right? Everybody just said purified water because I saw y'all go like this.
Right.
I saw that. But I have to say, y'all didn't say nothing. Your mouth didn't. I didn't hear anything come out of your mouth. Or nothing. So now you're forcing me to believe you said something that I didn't hear. You forcing me to believe that you said something I didn't see your mouth move or nothing. So my encouragement to these, indifferences is, who is that voice? That's who you are. A lot of people choose to believe that voice that said purified water without their mouth speaking is the enemy, or that voice is, a person they should ignore, or that voice leads them astray. I like to think positive before I think negative in all situations, and that, well, this is who I am. I don't know what else to believe this voice is supposed to be. Some call it intuition. Well, it hasn't failed me yet.
Never.
A lot of times you get those situations. Something told me, no, that was you telling yourself that you shouldn't have done that, or that, you should have stopped that from happening, or whatever. But it's about getting to know that voice. And I feel that when pastors, look at that from a youthful perspective, like, kids are, with COVID just jacked up a lot. Kids are struggling, man. Like,
yes.
There's no structure. There's no principles. You can do whatever you want, however you want, without getting beat for it.
Yes.
We just came up in a different generation.
Yes.
And so it's like, because of that, you have to recognize that evolution is important just as much as tradition. So if you're not reaching to the youth by being transparent or being open enough to change and converse about things you don't want to talk about, I'm pretty sure people will be a lot more responsive to that energy, as opposed to just believing that this voice in their head says they can't.
But do you think the main thing is, because you said about how all of us are indifferent? I'm one who always, and I even said this coming up through school, I don't mind being different. Right. Different is something that stands out more than all the rest of you that's doing the same. So it sounds like the main problem is you got all these different people with all these different views and mindsets, and because of them being different and having different matter of opinion, it's not being accepted.
Very true. Who doesn't like, the new kid on the block? Everybody.
Because we don't know.
Exactly. And it's like, well, I like to take that as a strength. Like, oh, you mad that I'm doing this well? Great.
That shows me.
You know what I'm saying? Like, I'd rather take that on, and still rock how I'm a rock. You know what I'm saying? Like, external forces ain't got nothing to do with the internal power of who I am. Which is why it's important to know who you are. There are a lot of pastors, there are a lot of leaders in, I'll say churches, but atmospheres of guidance.
Keep it real. Alleged guidance.
Allegedly.
But there are leaders in these entities and structures that don't know themselves.
Don't know themselves, and you a pastor.
Yeah, and for me, it's like, uncertainty from a leader is just not something I'm going to follow, because I know what leadership is as a musician, from leading choirs or bands or whatever, producing. It's just a different mentality, you know. But that is also a product of their generation, you know, and their parents not having what's happening in this generation, which is like this unveiling of understanding of, you know what, I could have changed this a long time ago, but I can't cry about this. It's time to change now. It's time to act now.
Yes.
You know, and so it's because that's happening how it is. There is quite naturally hesitation, you know, to pursue or commit to, you know, fulfilling what it would take for the real change everybody desires in these churches nowadays, which is just to get back to how it used to be, you know, where people actually looked out for each other, people loved each other, people cared, you know, the music was bumping, and we wasn't all playing these white chords, 3 chords this, 3 chords that. That's the song.
Because the
45
anointing
minutes.
is only in them chords.
Exactly.
Out of all the music that God created, the anointing is only in these 3 chords.
That means you putting it in a box then.
I don't think that they realize that they are putting God in a box. Like when they talk about the young people and what we're doing and how what we're doing is so out there, I don't think that they genuinely realize that they're boxing the expansiveness of God, because God is such a broad idea, a thought. Like, you can't even fathom all that it takes to consider all the aspects of God. Like, you just mentioned all of the many galaxies, the millions of galaxies. Okay, so per our belief system, God created all those galaxies. So the galaxies that we have yet to see, we have yet to touch.
And mine can't even go that far.
Our minds can't even go that far. Why would you continuously put God in this one box? I'm going back to the template, because
Tradition is comfortable.
it's not only is it comfortable, but tradition is also what has kept the young people from feeling comfortable to enter in. You know what I mean? Like you just said, we all wanted to go back to how it used to be. The music was bumping. People cared about each other. You know what I mean? People weren't so concerned about, well, you got dreads, so you can't preach the gospel, because the gospel and anointing only flows through this Caesar.
And you look of the world, so the anointing is not upon you.
Right.
But we look in the Bible, you have many men that had long hair. And if he cut off his hair, he was going to lose his anointing.
Samson.
Now that's the Bible.
Now that's the word. 'Cause they love to say, well, is it in the word?
Because you know they
That's
looking
the
at us
word.
crazy. We sitting up here with this long hair hanging and shaking. So we had to throw that on out there.
I'm just gonna water my seeds. Got nothing to do with that.
They keep watering them.
That part.
So I do want to ask you a question.
Yeah.
So to get back to, because like you said, this season is about healing, restoration, recovery. What do you think churches could do to restore and heal the broken relationship between the young people and the traditional mature saints?
Pay attention.
Ooh, there it is.
Pay attention. You know, because the other alternative to that, or argument rather, is the old people are saying, get saved before you go to hell, and all of these other kind of, you know, biblical principles and stuff. And it's like, that's scaring people off. Like, you're not paying attention to the times. Still doing things that were done in the past, you know. And so it's like, pay attention to what's going on. We're in a completely new world. COVID said, you know what? What God said through COVID, if you will. I'm starting all the way over. To you business owners, start over. To you entrepreneurs, start over.
Hospitals,
Start over. Fire departments, EMS, healthcare, start over. And so it's like, what makes you think the church is any different?
everybody else got to start over and change except the church.
Right. And these churches have been affected by COVID drastically.
Very much so.
You know, people have, been dying left and right, man. And so, with that being said, it doesn't mean that we ignore the youth. And it doesn't mean that, well, because COVID is going on, we can now just choose to be lazy and not care about the things that are going to matter once we die. Like, we still need to pay attention to what's going on enough to invoke the youth, and to me, I think that can be done just through communication. Instead of doing, free hot dogs on the corner, or instead of doing fish fries and stuff like that. Man, put on some things that the youth like, concerts, music. You know, get the local community involved, like in gardening. You know, let's teach our people how to garden and be self-sufficient. You know, let's get in the community and say, hey, this is what we're about over here. If you want to be about this type of energy, come over. You know, I guarantee you, youth will be like, you know what, they on some special stuff over there. Let me go see what they're talking about at least. You know, because it's different. It's not, if you don't come here, you're going to hell.
It's a way to draw you without beating you over the head with God, and you're going to hell.
You can be kind. It's okay.
And love and kindness.
You know, and it's unfortunate, and I say that often, like, just because, man, as a musician, you get used so much. You know, what people don't realize is you're literally an open vessel providing an atmosphere for so many stories. You don't know what anybody's going through in church. You don't know, even in playing in the secular world. You know, I love hip hop, I love R&B, I love jazz. You know, every time I'm behind my instrument, though, I recognize that I'm a vessel, and that people that show up need this energy to help them fulfill whatever voids they may have in their life. You know, whether that's through the lyrics, whether that's through the chords, whether that's through the bass, the drums. It's like, you just gotta recognize you don't know what people are going through, and that, you know, at all times you should be kind. You know, and especially to yourself. You know, but people are, like I said, there's this unveiling going on where people are recognizing, oh, I can be this, oh, I can be this, oh, I'm woke now, I'm this, I'm that. And all of these normalizations and, you know, social media hyping things up to be things that they just never will be. You know, it's like you're still gonna have to deal with yourself
At the end of the day.
At the end of the
you know,
day.
and that's how we fix the problem. You know, when it comes to unifying things in the church, we gotta work on ourselves.
Didn't we just talk about that?
We did just talk about
It's
that.
amazing how confirmation comes around. and I hope y'all learn that. Work and worry about self. I'm so worried about who you sleep with, how you look, how you dress, and all this hell I'm dealing with. If I concentrated on me and got me together, maybe I could be ready and willing to deal with you. But I'm so stuck in hiding behind all this filth. All I can point out is, that's out of place. And we're still going in a constant cycle.
Yeah.
And it's toxic, man. It's very toxic, especially when you're oblivious to the consequences, you know, of how it affects your kids.
Man.
You know, they're looking at us 24/7. You know, how it affects the energy you walk around with. You know, I tell people all the time in like choirs or different settings, I say, man, people will reflect what you project. If you're constantly putting out negative energy, then you're gonna get that back.
Can we get a rewind? Look to the camera when you say it. Either one.
Whatever people will reflect what you project. If you're constantly putting out negative things, you're gonna get negative back. If you're constantly putting out positive things, you're gonna always get positive energy back. You know, so I always tell people, you know, starting with yourself is always a win situation. You know, focusing on somebody else, you know, is never gonna solve anything. You know, and if anything, as we can see clearly, it pushes people away. No matter how good your God is and how much He saves or how much He's done for you, it still doesn't mean I want to be a part of that to somebody.
Because of the way that you have conducted yourself.
Yes.
Because of the way that you have treated my kids, or
That's
the way
right.
that you have treated my loved ones.
That's right.
And I will be transparent for a moment. I know that there was a space of time where I wasn't going to church at all for a number of years. Like, I didn't enter into the building. Excuse me. I wouldn't go because some things had happened. Personal things happened with other members in my family that made me look at these individuals and say, okay, so if you're supposed to be a Christian and walking in love, because that's the part, you know, that's what I read in the scriptures. I don't know what they read, but that's what I read. If you are a Christian and you're supposed to be walking in love, how could you do the things that you're doing, and how could you say the things that you're saying? And so I had to take a break and just refocus myself and think about, like you all both just said, the things that I was taught. Like, okay, so instead of nitpicking me or my loved one, let's break this down. What's wrong with you? Why did you feel the need to say that? Why did you feel the need to come from that negative place? And then can I even trust leadership now because you have disappointed me, disappointed my loved ones. You've disappointed me in such a major way that I don't even know if I want to be a part of this belief system anymore. You know what I mean? But it was in my separation from the church that I developed a genuine relationship with God by myself. You know what I mean? And I think that's one thing that people that have grown up in the church, they struggle with. You know what I mean? Like, they've allowed the negative energy that has been projected across the pulpit and among the older saints to affect their relationship with Christ. And once you know in your mind, this ain't got nothing to do with y'all. This is between me and God. And once you have that confidence, like, regardless of what I just did, God's still gonna love me. Yeah. Regardless of how many tattoos I got, God's still gonna love me.
At the end of the day.
Regardless of who I'm married to or who I sleep with, God himself said, I will still love you. And so I think that traditional church members have forgotten about how deep the love of Christ really goes. You know what I mean? And that if it covered, and I said it last season, I'm going to say it again, if it covered your sins and had the energy or power to save and deliver and heal and restore, why can't it do the same for me? It can. You know what I mean?
It always will.
And it all the same yesterday, today, and forevermore. So it's never going to change. Like his love that he extends towards us, it will never change. Regardless of how you feel about how long the hair is, regardless of how you feel about this show and what we're talking about, regardless of how you feel about who this one sleep with, who this one married to, regardless of how you feel,
That part.
God's still gonna love us. All of us. And I think it's high time that we reflect that love towards each other. Yeah. Because why am I gonna come to your church and your establishment and your, religious
I can feel the hate when I'm walking through
when
the
I
door.
can feel it as soon as she got on Chanel today. That drug dealer of a husband must be. But what if he ain't dealing drugs? What if you wrong?
If you concentrate on you and go to work every day, maybe you can get you some Chanel too. Stop worrying about what I'm doing. And that is such, clearly from this conversation, the perspective of how people think. That's why he said, let this mind
be in Christ.
Come on now. I can go there. But our minds are so screwed up.
Well, that's because, like we just said, people need to go to therapy.
Yes.
And we're in the home though too.
Yeah.
Because how do I as a child tell my mother that she's wrong for not allowing me to be myself?
Ooh, yeah, I know where you're coming from.
I definitely know where you're coming from.
Who am I to tell my mother, or who am I to tell my grandmother, or whoever in our family that's older than me that they are wrong? And 10 out of 10 times, what it boils down to is the older generation, our parents and up, just choose to not accept that the answers are what the answers will always be, and that's either you're going to change or you're not.
But I'm going to be me.
I'm going to be fine, But it doesn't mean I need to cater to, anything that you want to force into my life. It doesn't mean that I'm obligated that because you are uncle or cousin or auntie or whatever, that you deserve my respect for, not believing what you want to believe in, or that you feel that I'm wrong for feeling how you wronged me, And it's like, once you get to a point to where you stop trying to find different answers outside of the ones that are already on the table. As soon as you discuss an art or bit of business or whatever, you will be completely amazed as to how easy life can be.
Yeah. Because they want to talk about everything except for what we're saying. Right. You know what I mean? And I know a religious organization here in the city a couple of weeks ago that they had a conference, and one of their day sessions was they kind of bit a little bit off what we were doing, but what they did was they had a day session where they had a group of young people and a group of older people, and they talked about what the, you know, how do we bridge the gap between the old people and the young people. And I was just saying, well, I would have loved to have been there, and I know that they know that this show exists, and I know that they know that I have been on this show as well as another show, and I would have loved for them to invite Pew Babies, because even with that, you know, you're having a conversation with people that's in the church. We're talking about how do you bridge the gap between the young people that's not even here for the church, not even checking for the church, don't know nothing about the church, and don't care to know nothing about the church. Like, what about these individuals? And so I wish that they would have opened up the doors a little bit and allowed other people who weren't just living in the template that they feel comfortable with to be a part of the conversation as well.
Keeping that box to
it's still a box to a degree. And I remember I was having a conversation with someone older than me, and they were saying, well, I said, well, what did you learn from the conversation? And they said, well, what I learned was that these young people want to be heard. You know what I mean? They want to be heard. But see, in our day, you know, when pastor said, you know, you wrong, you know, even though we were hurt, our feelings were hurt, we didn't say nothing, we just took it. And I said, well, see, this is the generation that has decided they're not going to take that, you know. And guess what? We are not going to take it. Like, I don't care. Like, one would say, well, that's not being humble.
No,
or one
not.
would say,
no, it's not.
Me taking it is me being humble. And it's like, so abuse is abuse is abuse is abuse is abuse. If we was okay with Tina leaving Ike when she was abused physically, how come we can't comprehend that emotional abuse will cause the same type of flight or fight response?
The same.
You know what I mean? Like, I'm going to leave this religious institution because you've hurt me emotionally. Now, you might not have gone upside my head after snorting cocaine, but you still hurt me emotionally. And I feel a kind of way about that. And I personally think that exactly what you just said, I think that we need to continue to have conversations with the older generation or the traditional church and those who are non-traditional young people, so that they can understand, like, we have a voice, we're saying something. Hear us, include us, involve us, all of us, not just the ones who fit your template that you feel, the picks and chooses, the ones that, you know, now you wearing the suit and you got the anointing and you've been to Bible school and I know you've been under my wings, and so I trust you to, you know, say what I would want you to say because you represent me, when it ain't got nothing to do with you.
But when you look at it like that, when I'm constantly trying to package and present and market to you the same thing, you're going to get the same result. Yeah. It's going to take you doing something different. If I've tried 100 times to get your attention and I'm seeing every time nothing's happening, sooner or later, I'm going to have to try to do a something to try to get your attention in a different manner. You cannot keep doing the repeated cycle and thinking that you're going to get a different response.
And that applies in business too.
In business, all the way around.
I tell you, you know, that also, poor business affects profit. Period. Let's not act like churches are not businesses.
It is.
Okay, so let's just talk about that.
We being real.
501c3.
You know, going back to your, you know, you're just forcing people to do the same thing over and over. That applies to the musicians as well. It's like, man, look, as for me personally, when I deal with a pastor that's new or a pastor that needs me for a service of any kind, you know, I say, hey, you know, what is your vision for this service? What is it you're requiring of me? You know, what are the times? What are the dates? Well, I need all the information. Right? To then say, okay, for this service, this will cost this much of my time. Right? So the problem is a lot of pastors want to put their musician into this cookie cutter version of we have the best hoopla organist, you know, behind him, pastor such and so, and you know, because he's following the pastor now, you know, it's like no, let's just wipe that clean. You know, it doesn't matter who's behind the pastor and playing, you still need to treat them right. Because nobody's going to show up to a church with no music.
Period.
Let's just call a spade a spade.
And since you're talking, I'm sorry.
Because I was finna go down there. I know where you finna go.
And since we're talking about payments,
Because I was finna go that way.
okay, so a big topic is people, staunch Christians, take issue with musicians playing for the church and the secular world. Now, the argument that I've heard from the musician's perspective is, well, if y'all were paying me enough and y'all were paying me on time, I wouldn't have to go out here. Because like you just said, you got a family, you got bills, you got responsibilities, you have to provide.
That's right.
So this is your gift that God gave you, and your gift is making room. And with your gift making room also comes responsibility. So give us your take on that whole, should musicians play in the world?
And some experience, because I already know some of these stories.
Yes, you do. Okay, so for one, there's no difference from playing in church to the secular world. I'm still showing up to play an instrument. I'm still showing up with my same government name. I'm still showing up to play music. You know, I think that it goes back to paying attention. You know, and well, no, let me not get ahead of myself. The argument that you said musicians have is, well, if you were paying me enough, I wouldn't have to go to the secular arena, if you will. To me, whether you paying me on time or not enough, I'm still gonna play music. On all facets, my gift, God didn't tell me at least that my gift is only subject to gospel music.
See, and that's all back to your personal relationship.
Exactly. You know yourself.
If he have not convicted you in that area,
Know yourself. You know, and if you have a problem with secular music versus gospel music, then maybe you should go cuddle in a corner and figure out what that indifference is. But as for me,
In my house.
okay, I'm going to play gospel music just how I play secular music.
because it's some
with
people.
all of me, with my energy, with my feeling towards whatever is being required of my gift. Period. It's not. I'm not going to leave the church to say, "Oh, they ain't paying me enough. I'm gonna go over here." Because to me, church ain't money. Church is honestly, for me, it's gotten to this point through a lot of trauma. It's gotten to this point through a lot of humiliation from the church. Yes, but church to me now has developed into a place where I can just say and correlate these stories that are being, told from the Bible. I can just correlate those things into positive affirmations. And who doesn't need a break from life to go to a church and or a different setting, a library, a coffee shop, whatever, and just get some, spiritual freedom to be fed, And so that's when I look at church now. I don't look at it as this versus this, or, you're not paying me enough, or, they paying me better and all of this, because the difference, the truth of the matter is, people in the secular world are the exact same in the gospel industry as well. People still cuss, people still rape, people still lie,
Smoke,
people drink, smoke, all of that. So there's really no difference, and it boils down again to knowing yourself. Because I can't help it. My gift is musicianship.
And doors are opening.
I can't help it that I've put in hours upon hours upon hours of practicing and developing my gift how it has thus far.
You have worked your craft.
Yes, I'm and still putting in hours. And so it's like, who are you to tell me that, I can't do what I do? You're not paying no bills. You are not the author of my life. I write my pages every morning.
What I want you to express so that people understand, even with you being a musician and you playing, and I know this, but I want you to express it so they can hear. Even with you playing both, that don't mean you don't love God no less.
Not at all.
That don't mean you don't have a less relationship with Him. You can still have that same relationship, but you are just using the gift that you have been given.
Yeah, and that just boils down to knowing yourself. Not feeling, I don't feel conviction anymore for making choices that work for me. Going back, you said something earlier talking about, or when I was like, who am I to tell my mother that she's wrong? That malfunction of a child or somebody who's younger just adamantly feeling like, no, that's a wrong way to think. Or how come you don't want to just change this small thing and this could just be easy? Like that mentality is what curses so much when it comes to churches, man, and especially musicianship, just because it's like people are afraid to be themselves. You know, well, I'm scared to go play at the R&B joint, even though it's gonna help me pay my rent. You know, but pastor said, just hold on, I'm gonna be faithful. Sometimes faith is action. It's saying, you know what, God ain't gonna judge me no different because this rent still need to be paid.
Do you hear me?
Is he gonna judge you for being a lack of a man?
He's like, I had a door open, but you didn't want to walk through it.
You feel me? You know, and so it's just like relinquish the judgment.
And that's such a big thing.
Relinquishing judgment, man. I mean, like even in like some of the churches I've been at that are heavy in like the LGBT community, it's like there's just a different atmosphere in those settings than there is from the traditional settings we came up in. You know, personally, I find freedom in just treating people how they deserve to be treated. It doesn't matter your sex. It doesn't matter what you choose to go at. None of that matters. I care about the heart, what you say, and that's it. Making sure you drink a little water, you know.
Yes.
But speaking outside of that, you know,
you need a little,
taste.
You know, but it's just you got to relinquish the judgment, you know, and that includes the parents. You know, everything is a product of how we were grown. I didn't raise myself, you know. So it starts with our parents, you know, and holding them accountable to the things.
Look at the man in the mirror.
Period. You know? Period. It starts with the man in the mirror, for real though.
And one thing that gets me too, because you talking so good about so much, it really baffles me with some of these churches today who they are okay. You know, well, let me start off this way. They upset, okay, you're a musician, you play secular and spiritual. But they'll be okay if you're a musician who come there and just play straight for them. But you smoke, you drink, you fornicate. I know some musicians, and we've had this conversation, they say the only way they can play their best is being high. Yeah. Am I right or am I wrong?
You're right.
The only way they can play the best and under the anointing is if they drunk. And you got churches that's okay with that, but you can't understand if just as well as I'm finna play for Mary, I'm finna go play for whoever.
Mary J.
Come on. I mean, I don't understand. How can you accept one form, but then deny the other? Come on.
That's the double standard that's in the church. And that's the consequence of not paying attention to what the youth have been saying. See, youth is life.
And we the ones that got to keep going forward.
I've never met, you know, I'm not going to say that, you know, there aren't elders who can be youthful.
Oh, most definitely.
But yeah, the wise ones take that understanding of that youth and infuse it in the next generation.
That's right.
That's the process that's being neglected.
That's right.
That's the process that's crippling the family. That's the process that's crippling the community. People just choosing to neglect the things that we know we all can change in an instant. And choosing to accept that, well, because it's this way, I'm just going to do it this way, how it's always been done. Which is completely lazy, which is completely inefficient, you know, and a slap in God's face if we want to be spiritual, because faith without works is dead.
That's what it says.
So people are just choosing to neglect the actions, you know, that it takes to be whatever change is needed, you know. And it's like you don't get good at doing push-ups by thinking about them.
You got to put in the work. And like you said, we got a lot of lazy, minded, and all the way around general people today. You want to see change, but you don't want to put forth no action.
Right, or you don't want to reach out or do the things that it requires to reach out to this generation of people, or you don't want to go back to having the skating parties. You don't want to go back to whatever forms of outreach that drew us.
Because I remember the skating parties.
I remember the skating parties, and that was lit. You know what I mean? And I would show up for the, 9 to 12, and sometimes the 12 to 4 or 5 in the morning. You know what I mean? But our time is slipping away from me. I'm sorry. Shout out to Jodeci. Not Jodeci, KC, and JoJo, which is basically Jodeci.
Yes, they all a part of the same. Right. Yeah. We know some people that know what you're talking about.
Yes. That clip will forever be funny. If you don't know what I'm talking about, inbox me. Live. Okay, I'm done acting up. But our time truly is slipping away from us. And so we don't want to hold you any longer, but we definitely appreciate you coming on and giving us the Pew Baby's perspective, the musician perspective, the human perspective.
The human, and that's the most important part.
Yes.
Yes.
I just want people to recognize, it's okay to be and do and say the things that you want to be and do and say.
Flat out.
Period.
And that's on Mary had every little lamb.
You're so crazy.
This is why you left me. But once again, this has been. Did you want to have any closing remarks, Bishop, Elder,
well,
Reverend, Deacon, Doctor?
Oh, see, you calling me too many titles. And you already know it ain't about the title. It's
I know.
about the essence behind it.
Come on,
Come on,
Essence
sir.
Fest.
Yeah, Essence Fest. But no, I hope the people really did get some good feedback and perspective from what you're saying, because they don't understand just how deep it is from, like I said, just dealing with the musician part and how effective and how much just the musician adds to the atmosphere. Because there are a lot of people that only go to church just for the music. And if you ain't got no good music, no good singers, on to the next.
I know we leaving, but music is a universal language that everybody
That
understands.
everybody
That's so true.
understands.
So if you pay attention to that language, I'm sure you'll pay attention. People start paying attention to you.
And on that note, that's how we gonna end it. We thank you for tuning in to this episode of Pew Babies. Share it with your friends, your cousins, your family. I promise you, you'll get something out of it. Be sure to please follow us at all our handles. Be sure to subscribe and like this YouTube video if you are enjoying the content and you want to see more that we are bringing to you. And on that note, be blessed until we see you next time. Peace.